Our first corruption scorecard, story focus, democratic South Africa's original sin, the arms deal. Now, we talk about the scorecard, and let me talk to Michael Marillier, who will be doing all the scoring. Michael, we're talking about a scorecard. Tell us how exactly the scorecard will work.
Absolutely, Thulas. Now, of course, something like this will be subjective from the very start, but we've done our best to focus on the key facts when it comes to the arms deal. And we've applied a weighting, Thulas, that should give you some perspective in terms of South Africa's priorities when it comes to dealing with corruption. So let's get started, and we'll just explain the weighting that we'll be using over the next few weeks. So we're going to start with charges. Thulas, were charges actually laid when it came to allegations of corruption? Charges are crucial because that's where it all starts, so we're giving that a 25% weighting. Then, day in court, Thulas. We're giving this a 40% weighting because South Africans want to see legal action. They want arrests and they want to see people actually appearing in court. Civil legal redress, that's a 25% weighting. So that's, for example, if the asset forfeiture unit claims back the money that was stolen during a corrupt act, or perhaps there's a commission of inquiry which is enforced in order to find out the facts before court action actually takes place. And finally, Thulas, political remedy. This is a bit of a bugbear in South Africa. We're giving this a 10% weighting. The key question, has someone been forced to step down? Have they resigned or perhaps been fired? Or have they just quietly been moved on to another position, another department, perhaps made an ambassador in some remote country? So the key question, is there a political consequence to corruption in South Africa? And that's how we're going to weight our scorecard. All
right, so given that background then of how the scorecard will work going forward, take us through where it lands in as far as arms deal corruption is concerned. It's a cold case from 1999, as we are saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get started with the arms deal. We'll start, of course, with charges. And interestingly enough, we are actually going to give South Africa 10 out of 10 for this. You might be surprised by that, but we'll explain it. Charges, of course, have been laid against former President Jacob Zuma, Shabir Shaik, and, of course, the French arms company, which is known as Thales. The bugbear, I suppose, for many South Africans is that these charges against the president and Thales were laid almost 20 years later. Be that as it may, Thulas, we're going to give 10 out of 10 for this, and with a weighted score of 25%, our scorecard rates this at 2.5. Let's move on very quickly to day in court, Thulas, and not quite such a rosy picture, I'm afraid. Of course, Shabir Shaik was convicted of fraud and corruption in 2005, so we've got to give some allowance for that. But many critics will say it was a sham sentence. He served roughly 2 years before he was eventually released on medical parole. We still wait for the day in court for Jacob Zuma and, of course, Thales. And on that note, there was an arms deal inquiry, as you know, which could have paved the way, Thulas, for more days in court not so long ago. But the arms deal inquiry was ruled invalid. You'll remember that a court actually said that the findings were simply not valid. The investigation was essentially a whitewash. So based on that, Thulas, our weighted score for day in court, 0.8. Let's move on to civil legal redress as we tally up these numbers, Thulas. So, as I mentioned, claiming back some of the money that was stolen during corruption, the asset forfeiture unit did actually claim 41 million rand back from Shabir Shaik in 2009. So we'll give some points for that. But at the same time, Thulas, you've got to consider the fact that Jacob Zuma spent at least 16 million rand of the state's money in legal fees trying to prevent his day in court. At least that's what his critics would say. And that arms deal inquiry, which I mentioned, Thulas, that cost around about 137 million rand. And, of course, it's now been scrapped entirely. So there may be an argument to say that there hasn't been much redress, especially from a financial point of view. So our score there, Thulas, 0.75 in terms of our weighted score. Now, let's focus on political remedy. Of course, we know that Jacob Zuma did resign in February 2018, so we're going to make an allowance for that, Thulas. But a lot of people will say too little, too late. It came after almost 9 years of the so-called Stalingrad approach, where Zuma used every available legal channel to prevent himself from actually going on trial. So in terms of that, Thulas, political remedy, not a great score, I'm afraid, 0.3. Let's focus very quickly on all of those 4 elements, Thulas, and then we'll present the final score. So just a reminder, of course, we have weightings for each different criteria, and the weighted scores: charges 2.5, day in court 0.8, civil legal redress 0.75, and political remedy, Thulas, 0.3. So how do we tally it up to get a final score? I'm afraid to say, South Africa, 4.35 is our final score on the corruption scorecard for the arms deal. It is essentially a fail in terms of South Africa's response to the arms deal. 4.35 for our very first corruption score.
Not a great score at all. And of course, our viewers can interact with the scorecard and also answer the opinion question that we are asking about South Africa's handling of the corruption in as far as the arms deal is concerned. Michael Marillier, thank you for that.